Open worlds have seen a big rise in popularity over the past decade or so. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it's happening, and with this rise, some game studios seem to be getting the message that bigger is always better. You know, kind of going against the whole quality over quantity saying. I don't think there's a definite line that dictates whether or not a game is milking its open world to seem better and bigger and more grand, but that definitely happens, and it's also definitely been used as a crutch to fall back on if a developer isn't too confident about their game. Now, I've always enjoyed the concept of an open world, not because it gives me more things to do, but more that I enjoy the freedom of exploring and just going with the flow of the world. You know, it's called free roam. Anyway, devs can take this as an opportunity to push as many, get this, structured activities at the player as possible, which is fine, like yay, extra game. But I think the open world loses credibility when every event in the world is focused around the player. It makes the open world feel like a hub for missions more than a major aspect of the game, as if all of the things happening in the world are contrived just for the protagonist to deal with, which I guess is always technically the case, but when it's so shamelessly obvious in a world that's made out to be alive, I never feel like I'm really discovering anything, so to speak. Again, that is not inherently bad, but it often defeats the purpose of having an open world in the first place. Subtlety is really valuable, and here's where I should have put a smooth transition into talking about Saints Row 2. I love Saints Row 2 because I don't have to be directly involved with everything that happens in the world. It exists independently of me. This might seem like it's not a huge deal in the long run, but it makes enough of a consistent impact that I still feel like the world won't get stale, and even better, it doesn't simply feel like a filler hub between missions. I still get a lot of enjoyment out of just observing the bizarre stuff that happens around the world naturally. Check this out, sometimes dudes will just jump off this building, and then you can just break the window and crash inside. That is inane. Whose idea was this? I mean, look at what's going on screen right now. I did not start any of this. It just happened. I like Grand Theft Auto, but I'm going to pick on it for a second just as an example. The world of GTA only seems to truly come alive once it's concerned with your shenanigans. Usually the only times I ever see things out of the ordinary are when I'm the one causing a ruckus, or when it's just a blatantly scripted event. It's a similar situation with Red Dead and Sleeping Dogs and countless others. Maybe it's on purpose to give more importance to the player and make sure they're getting the full experience, but it doesn't feel genuine to me. I feel like this is a really valuable aspect of design that developers miss out on at times. There's such a focus on how intensely we can engage the player in our world that the world itself can lose some of its repute. I don't know if this is the case, but it certainly seems like there's a mentality where if it's not something the player can be presented with directly as an element of gameplay, there's no reason to put it in. It might just be me, but I don't feel the need to be constantly involved with everything. You know, stop and smell the roses. I know this has a lot to do with feeling and perception, but the way Saints Row's world is structured has a lot to do with how players act within it. The open world doesn't serve as a glorified menu. Saints Row 2 uses its world as a means of storytelling in a way. It ties into the wacky shenanigans going on in the plot. The story takes place in and is based around the world, whereas a lot of games have their story distinctly separate from the open world, yet still include an open world for the heck of it. Think of the times you finished a mission and wanted to go back to the place the mission took place in, only to find out that it's inaccessible once you've finished. Bummer, dude. Going back to the GTA bullying, the world of GTA seems almost sterile to me, and when the story is as absurd as it is, finishing a mission and going back to the predictable world where basically the only outstanding factor is the player is kind of a letdown. I need to make it very clear that I don't think Saints Row 2 is ultimately better than every other open world game. They all have their merits and aspects worthy of praise. I do firmly believe that Saints Row 2, while not being particularly pretty, captures the essence of a real living place more than a lot of other games do. Because the game is innately gamey and not focused on presenting itself as realistic, there's less pressure to have everything fit in just right. The game is not groundbreaking by any means, really, but it's apparent to me that the devotion to making a fun, interesting, and dynamic world paid off. Given that I beat this game 5 years ago and still play around in the world for a goof every now and then today.